I see the first question is, in which context and situation is the self-learning of routes method presented here more efficient than a routing algorithm like NLSR? So NLSR is a routing protocol mostly used for wide area networks. If like we have NDN testbed with machines on many different universities and research institutes all over the world, you want to set up machines and you run the routing protocol like NLSR. This self-learning depends on broadcast to learn where the data is. Therefore, it's only really reasonable within a local environment, say in home network or in a academic department network. Right? So the trade-off is self-learning. It's very easy to use because there's no configuration, but you cannot use it in a very large scale network because of overhead of broadcast your initial interest. Do pure consumers need any specific configuration to join NDN network in your work?
Right. So this is an interesting topic, and we've only thought about it a little bit. But our first flush thought was, if you are a pure consumer, then you don't actually need anything besides, say, a trust schema. Because if you're not publishing any data, unless you're doing signed interests, which you'll avoid for now, since I don't think they've actually been in a release, that may change very soon. Yeah, unless you're producing signed interests, you don't need a security identity. You just need to know who you're able to trust. So if that were the case, then you wouldn't need to do this configuration stage. If, however, you were a consumer and you did want to use signed interests, since I think the full implementation is coming soon, then you would still need to go through configuration because you still need to have a security identity and a certificate. And if you were a consumer and you wanted to transition to producing something, the same thing would apply. Does that answer the question?
I mean, if I add to this answer, I think there's always some kind of identity that you have to configure. So because there's a lot of reliance on signing and crypto, even though you as a consumer may not be publishing data, you still may need some form of identity for the local management. So that would be kind of the answer, my addition to this answer.
There is a question about name obfuscation. So the question is, with obfuscation methods where the names are constantly changing to increase the level of privacy, wouldn't this undermine the psync module, such as when sharing friends list? I think that's handled at the application level. It has nothing to do with psync. Psync only tells you what potential name prefixes you can subscribe to. So whenever there's a new name prefix, suppose the obfuscation method changes the name prefix, then the subscriber will get notification that there's a new prefix. Do you want to subscribe to that? So that's how things work. It's not something psync has to deal with. It's something the application has to deal with. The application has to look at the new prefix and see whether it's something of interest. I would assume that if the producer and consumer want to do this obfuscation, they have to agree on a way to change the name. So if, say, they're just doing this change once in an hour, then they would both change the name at the same time. So the consumer and the producer will decide, okay, if we're going to hash this name to a new name, then we do this at the same time. So they will have some way to decide what the new name should be, and they have to agree on that. That's what NDN NDN basically uses name for rendezvous, and the producer and consumers, they all have to agree on the name. Otherwise, there's no way for them to communicate. So there's no difference here. If you use obfuscation, the producer and the subscriber or the consumers, they have to agree on that method. Of course, this is opaque to other people who are not in that particular group. That's how this will be providing this privacy. But again, it's not that the producer has to arbitrarily change the name. There's other ways to provide name anonymity. I put this as a reply to Casey. That's the NDN protocol. I included the link in my reply.
So the material covered in this tutorial, most of them are still under development, but you can check out the existing code and from the NDN code repository. And if anyone has any suggestions or comments, we're very welcome those comments. And of course, we welcome you to use the API or extend the API to develop applications and give us feedback. The last one, the NDN self-learning implementation, I think the code is there in the Garrett, but we still in a review process, so hasn't officially merged into the mainline of the code, but it's already in Garrett.